Fight.
Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. And before we get into today's episode with Michael DeRosa from house-enterprise.com, House of College Hoops, Road to the Garden, and many other things that he'll get into when you hear that. Good buddy Michael over at the network, house-enterprise.com. Done many shows with Michael on everything college basketball, House of College Hoops, interacted with him and gotten to know him over the last year or so. First time he's dropped on this podcast. Definitely want to talk to him again in the future about some Big East stuff. We really didn't get a chance to jump deeper into it at the end of the podcast there. Had to head off to dinner. You'll see me looking off out the window. I'm obviously being picked up for a birthday dinner. So, ignore that at the end when you see it. But just wanted to let you know there. The Big East conversation was really good. Definitely was cut short, unfortunately. Really quick, just wanted to remind you, if you're heading to any of the Sweet 16 games that we previewed today, or any sporting event in the future, use code 2pointers, SeatGeek.com, link in the top of the description. Thank you to SeatGeek for being the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers Podcast. Earns you guys an exclusive discount code, $20 off your first purchase. It does support me and helps me create better content and just helps support the channel overall. We greatly appreciate that. SeatGeek, if you weren't aware, it allows you to check out your seat before you even get a chance to go to the arena in most arenas in the United States, as well as a deal score on a scale of 1 to 10, red, yellow, green as well. So you get a good idea of what value you're getting for SeatGeek. $20 off that first purchase, SeatGeek.com, or link in the top of the description, and use the code 2pointers, TWOPOINTERS. Really great deal for you guys there. Again, Michael was really awesome. I greatly appreciate his time. Without further ado, enjoy the interview with Michael. All right, as you heard in the intro, joined today for the first time on this show, which is really cool, Michael DeRosa from House Enterprise, House of College Hoops, plenty of other places that he's going to tell you about. Today we're going to talk about as you see on the screen for those on YouTube, if you're listening on another podcast platform, jump on over to YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. Round of 64 and 32 recap. Obviously, this is not going to be, unfortunately, a super long, big, drawn-out thing. I want to highlight some things that I know DeRosa is really good at, some storylines, some things that may have happened that you're not going to hear about on a long recap. We're not going to, like he said in the pre-record, he's like, we're not going to sit here and talk about the first round game against, Utah State or whatever, for Utah State. It just is what it is. We're going to find the things that's really interesting. I do want to preview the Sweet 16 because I think there's some interesting thoughts there. And then Michael's big expertise area is the Big East. There's some interesting ties to two different programs there that we'll get into. They've already had some interesting offseason stuff with only 3 teams in the tournament, so definitely want to get into that. Before we do, introduce yourself. Again, first of all, welcome to the Two Pointers Podcast for the first time.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Everett. It's weird because we talk all the time, but now we're talking different platform, a little different style. Yeah. But my name is Michael. Road to the Garden. I write a lot about Big East stuff. I'm a student at this university. It's called Butler. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it there. Yeah. I grew up DC, so that's why I'm wearing a Georgetown shirt right now. I'm flexing it for the camera if you're on audio.
That's not home field, is it? Home field needs to get a hold of that.
It is not, no, but actually the back, I don't know if it says it visually. I can't see that.
You got it down a little bit. Yep, down. And then stand up a little.
Stand up a little.
Saxa something. Yeah.
We're bringing Saxa back is what it said.
That's the best 2-minute open of any show I've ever done. Someone's turning their back completely and trying to
turning their back to the camera, all chaos. That's the full Michael DeRosa experience. So if you don't know me then, you know me now.
Petition t-shirt makers, by the way, to never put stuff that high. Put it in the middle.
You know what I should have done? I could have just turned the t-shirt around. That would have been so much smarter. Here we go.
I kind of like that. I think just leaving that like that is perfect. Honestly, for the rest of the show, you should just leave it that way. No,
it doesn't get too uncomfortable. Done.
That honestly should have been 2 different shirts if we're being real, but then you can't wear them. So I think that's fair. Well, shout out to Georgetown for getting a shout out 30 minutes before the segment. So, but yeah, no, you were in the middle of that and talking about the shirt. So Georgetown, Butler, where were we?
Where were we? Ding and DeRosa podcast I do, House Enterprise, all that sort of stuff. I like basketball. I watch a lot of basketball. Basketball. Yes, Michael DeRosa. That's my name. That's my game. Yeah. There we go. Intro. Good enough.
That's why you're here. At MD The Dream is on this screen for those on YouTube, and it'll also be linked in the description below. talking about the round of 64 and the round of 32, here's the thing that I like. I know the overarching conversation topic right now is, was it boring, right? And I know that we, based on previous conversations and shows, we completely agree on that topic that it was not. From a standpoint of, it's just the March Madness tournament, there's really never going to be a boring one. Yeah. I think is ultimately where the plane landed. So I'm not even going to go there. Was there a game where you felt like the wrong team won? I looked at this today and I went, obviously upsets happen. Yeah. But was there one where you went, I cannot believe that other team didn't win still?
Yeah, this was a really good question. I had to think about this for a little bit. And usually I don't do a ton of prep like before shows and stuff. So this one got me deep in the bag. Nevada Dayton was the one that came to me because I don't know how Nevada lost that game. Nevada was the better team for like 35 minutes, and then Dayton just hit everything. So that was the one that jumped off the page to me as like, I think the wrong team won here because like, I don't think, even though Oakland was an upset, even though Yale was an upset, Yale was actually kind of one I thought about, but like, no, Auburn just did stupids. Just looking at that, yeah, and then Oakland, Golke hit 10 threes. Like, you deserve to win if your guy hits 10 threes. That was the one game. Nevada-Dayton was just like, I don't know how Dayton won this game. They didn't play well, and they just found a way to win. And Nevada, I thought, played well and somehow lost.
I feel like some of the easy answers are going to be like Kansas-Samford because of the ridiculous play. Yeah. Like, I'm just trying to flip through them. Like Florida-Colorado. Like, Colorado's been incredible, and they got as far as they did, and I'm going to 100% gloat and say that I picked that. I did it on the two shows we did together that week. I was like, Colorado's going to do this, and they're going to lose to Marquette close, and that's exactly what happened. Yep. Like, there's just, I'm like scrolling through it, like Texas A&M, Nebraska, you couldn't really argue because it's almost, I think it was a 15, 18-point game at that point. I think you're right. I think it's like, I didn't prepare anything either because the question was for you. Like Drake, Washington State, there was enough plays defensively down the stretch for Washington State. I just didn't like. The reason I asked the question is because I don't think there was really a solid answer. Yeah. I think if there was one, it's probably Nevada Dayton. So I think we hit that one really easy. I honestly thought we would spend longer on that. So, but that's really, just a thought for like, it'll speak to what people think about the boringness of the tournament. Does it feel like a lot of the upper teams won? Obviously, I think it does a little bit because we're getting a really star-studded Sweet 16 minus one double-digit seed.
Who's that double-digit seed?
We're not. Look, people know that I try to like keep the fandom out of things a lot. I didn't do a great job of that yesterday on ECB. Yeah. I understand that.
Yeah, you had fun. Who cares?
I'm having fun regardless, except it's like the closer we get to Friday, like the more and more uncomfortable I get. So I'm just like, I'm glad that we're doing this early in the week. Regardless of who it is, we'll get to Sweet 16 in a minute. What was the surprising result to you? I think where you're probably going to go with this, but was there a result that you just couldn't believe even now?
Yale beating Auburn. That's the one for me. That is the one.
That whole section, just like even where you thought about BYU, right? For those who don't know, like you were about the biggest BYU supporter since November, and like even just that whole quadrant right there. So sorry, I interrupted you.
BYU played such a bad game. Like they just couldn't hit anything. Robinson played well, but like no one else could hit anything. I didn't even think Duquesne played well, but like if BYU won that game shooting that poorly, they could have given Illinois a scare, man. Because the Mormons don't have 2 games where they can't hit anything like that. That one hurt, but yeah, Auburn Yale really surprises me because I don't think Yale played like terrific. Like Yale was good, but like I felt like Yale played the best possible game they could have because Poulikitis went for 30. But like other than that, I don't think Yale did anything special, and I think Auburn just missed so many bunnies down the stretch, and they just had so many moments. It's just like how, and their length definitely played a factor, but not enough of a factor. Combine that with Baker Mazar getting ejected 2 minutes in. It was warranted in my mind. It was a warranted ejection. That one, thinking back on it, I think if they play that game another 9 times, I think Auburn wins 9 times.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Like, obviously Auburn is so highly rated in KenPom, and it's still very eye-opening to even just have KenPom open and see that there's a white line in the middle of all the top 15, 20 red there. So yeah, the Auburn thing is really interesting. I figured that was probably the answer. What team were you the most shocked you got wrong? Like, you may have a team alive still that like may hey, I had them in the Final Four, they'll lose in the Sweet 16. But from just the round of 64-32, recap's sake, was there a team that you just are still sitting here to this moment going, I still can't believe that they didn't go that far? Very briefly, for those that listen to my bracket show, mine was New Mexico, and here we are talking about the team that they beat in the Sweet 16. So I have a very obvious glaring hole there, but do you have one?
New Mexico would be one of mine. I also had New Mexico in the Sweet 16. I had them in the Sweet 16 fairly confidently, frankly. I liked their draw quite a bit. And not only did they lose, that was never a competitive game. Clemson beat them from tip to finish. Even in moments when, actually, no, that was the Baylor game. I got those two mixed up. But Clemson was the better team throughout. That was a wrong team favored game. And I fell for it. I fell straight into the trap. So that one definitely got me. We mentioned Auburn a couple of times. I was really high on Auburn. So yeah, Auburn got me again. Just, oh my God. I knew I'd mess up with that team and they got me. But other than that, there isn't one team. I was low on NC State too. Your NC State Wolfpack. I thought Texas Tech would beat them fairly convincingly, honestly. I just thought Texas Tech's offense was going to do a lot more than it did in that game. I thought State's defense really held up. And State was able to score on the other end. That wasn't something I thought State would score on the other end, but I thought Texas Tech could outscore them. And the game would be fairly close-ish late, but I thought Texas Tech was going to win that game. I was fairly confident in that. Obviously, we have some of the bigger upsets, but those were the teams that really stood out to me. Oh, and Kansas. Kansas getting dog walked by Gonzaga was I just didn't see that coming.
Yeah, neither did I, especially from a Bill Self team. But I think we kind of learned, even if the quote was taken out of context, I kind of think we know where his head was at for a couple of months here. So I'm not kind of surprised now, as low as I am on Gonzaga still. Look, first time on the show, you're going to get the treatment like every other guest does, where I think I prepare a good agenda and then I think of 5 other things in the last hour to ask. So this is where we start doing that. What coach benefited the most from making the Sweet 16?
From making the Sweet 16? Dang, I was going to
Actually, I'll open the door a little bit. Let me be clear. What coach benefited the most, whether it's and I put in my notes that I never sent you, hot seat, reputation, etc. However you want to frame this thought. Maybe it's a coach that won the first round game but didn't win the second round game. Is there a coach that you felt like, whether it's moving this offseason, something like that nature, is there somebody that really benefited from their result on the winning side of things?
Yeah, so I think the obvious answer is Kevin Keats, just because he was probably going to get canned. Yeah.
Put him over here.
So,
yeah, we're gonna put him over here out of the side because he legally cannot get fired now.
Yeah,
well, technically, but anyway.
But yeah. So that was the big one. I think Bucky McMillan just got an extension, and I think the nation now knows the name Bucky McMillan and Buckyball because of how well that game was down the stretch. Looking at the two that got hired to Darian DeVries, but DeVries always had that reputation. And then looking at Mark Byington at JMU, that's another one. Byington, it was a name that very niche college hoops fans knew, but towards the national thing, we didn't really know about him till he not only did they beat Wisconsin bad. So that's another team that okay, Mark Byington, he's getting a new job, and it's a job that I think suits him fairly well. That's an upgrade, and one that I think they won't be good next year because Vanderbilt's going to take time to rebuild, but over the next few years, I think that's a good play. And another coach reputation, just looking at to answer the original question. Yeah, Brad Brownell has to be. The Brownell experience is just is he going to be here? Okay, he's always on the verge of being fired. You make it Sweet 16, you buy yourself another 2 years in my mind. So Brad Brownell, to me, of every coach that made the Sweet 16, did the most for his reputation, aside from the obvious of Kevin Keats.
Yeah, I have some Clemson fan friends that went to the school many years past in Brownell's time there, and this sure derails any of the fire Brad Brownell conversation. Yeah. Maybe not from them, who have been calling for it for a decade. I'm sure the 15 to 25 people that I know for a fact listen to this show that went to Clemson are going to really enjoy that one. On the flip side, as the obvious sports show journalistic thing to say or do, who obviously on the flip side of it, who negatively was impacted by this reputation-wise, or anything that just, hot seat again, reputation. Same question, just on the flip side.
Calipari, 100%. Kentucky fans.
I didn't think you were going to go there. I really didn't. I have an idea in my head where I thought you were going to go, and that wasn't it. But
I'm going to be very interested to see what you think I was going to say after I make this point. Yeah, it's Calipari. The fact that Kentucky fans are they're a wild bunch. I've seen all the Twitter drama and all that. It's Calipari. The fact that Kentucky fans every year, it's the same cycle of them buying in, like, oh, man, we lost in the first round. We got to fire him. He's the worst coach ever. And then, like, they land a 5-star recruit, and they're like, ooh, okay, never mind. We're going to be really good next year. We're winning the national title. Then, like, they lose a couple regular season games, then it's fire him. Then they have, like, a couple big wins to end the season. Then it's we're making the national championship. And that cycle completely happened again. And then they lost in the first round. But it feels a little different. Like, people are actually kind of sick of Cal. But, like, you also don't fire Calipari, so you shouldn't. Yeah, he was the one to me that stood out as like that's a stock. That stock definitely went down, and it could burn the bridge if next year doesn't perform up to expectations, which knowing Kentucky, the expectations will be higher than they should be.
There's a few that came to mind for me that where I necessarily thought you were going to go was probably Bruce Pearl. I thought you would go with another SEC coach, but obviously he's made a Final Four more recently than Coach Calipari has. So that's a very, very important wrinkle. Greg Gard, I know Jake brought it up on the preview show. That's a big one. 22-13 this year. To lose in the first round, even if it was to the Bington, I can't ever get his last name correct. Even if it was to the James Madison Dukes led by Coach Bington.
But they were also like the better team to me. You know?
Oh, I know. We're on. You and I. You know, we're on the same page with that part of it. I just from the idea of they're the 5 seed. Like even it doesn't like the way the committee, not the way the committee, the way that the Wisconsin athletic department is going to look at that is they don't care, right? They don't care who the 12 seed was, right? It could have been any of the other 12 seeds. It could have been any program, right? It could have been FAU for crying out loud. But it was the fact that they were in the position to be the 5 seed and should have probably won that game. But they, from what we think about them analytically and from studying them all year, like, yes, they were definitely not the better team. Another one, I'm looking at how long Todd Golden has been at Florida. I don't think it's long. So definitely not something I think about there.
But Jamar Booyah team made the tournament, the St. Petersburg. I think he's only been there 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. So I was looking at, like, again, not to be SEC beat up here, but I was just looking at a few that I thought, and I realized the more I'm thinking about it, there's really not a ton that got affected that negatively. Because even like Randy Bennett, St. Mary's losing in the first round, I think he's probably all right.
St. Mary's, there's no, like, I think when we like take a step back, it's like, why is this really small school in Moraga in a largely irrelevant conference good at basketball year in, year out? Because they have an excellent coach.
Yep.
There's nothing like recruiting wise that pulls a kid to Moraga, California. So now Randy Bennett, I'm surprised he hasn't, maybe he just really likes it there, but that dude could kill it at another job, man. Kill it. Maxed out there.
The one that I think we need to do a follow-up on this because I brought it up. I don't know if you were on the show because you've done plenty of ECB shows this year, but may have not been on this exact one. We opened with something around Michigan State and like the Spartan resume of like Tom Izzo or something. There's something about that. And I was like, not for today, but there's a lot to unpack where his resume all time might not be as strong as we think it is. And I'm not willing to go there yet because I haven't done the full research. However, losing again in the round of 32 after being an 8-9 seed to a team, I get that it's North Carolina. The Tom Izzo, I know he's at the end of his career, so like keeping that in mind. Like end of, as in he said he's going to coach till he's dead. So could be, I mean, at this point in his 60s, 70s, like that's just we're going with science here at this point. Again, not for today necessarily to unpack that, but did the way you view Tom Izzo change based on the fact that he didn't get it done again after a struggle to start the year? Finally made the tournament 8-9 seed. Anything about him that may have changed?
Not really. I think it more so changed with me because I had that team. I believe I had him second preseason in the country, which was a bad take, especially because I had Duke number 1, which was also a bad take. But yeah, I just looking at Izzo's. I'm just on the Wikipedia page. He made the NIT the first 2 years at Michigan State. Since then, he hasn't missed a tournament aside from 2020, which just didn't happen. And I can tell you they would have made the tournament then. Runner-ups, Final Fours. Only hasn't been knocked out of the first round since 2015-16. And then before that, it was 2010, 2011. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it really changes how I view Tom Izzo. One interesting wrinkle to me is I think they're going to have to use the portal more, especially because there have been some like minor rumors, but still some rumors that there's some like weird stuff going on that some guys might want to leave Michigan State that we wouldn't expect. So I think they're going to have to use the portal more, and I'd be very interested to see how he adapts to that in terms of just as a coach. But No, it doesn't really change how I view Tom Izzo yet. Next season, if he can't get the portal and like his roster just doesn't work next year, I think it'd make me look back and go, this guy's just from a different era.
I know we haven't necessarily touched on really any games at all, but that was what I kind of wanted to give you when we put this together. Was I think there were some overarching conversations.
Sure.
I think those are happening. I guess we'll just from something we hadn't covered yet. Was there a player that didn't have to make the Sweet 16 or anything like that, but a player from the round of 64 or round of 32 that you felt like really proved it, that if they transfer this offseason, that they're going to be a name people are clamoring for?
I was really impressed with Trey Townsend at Oakland in both games. I thought he played really well. Yeah, he was a name to me that stood out and said, yeah, I think he proved it in the Xavier game when they went into Cintas and beat Xavier, but he proved it again and again. I'm really impressed with him. He's a guy everyone should go after. Terrence Edwards at JMU just entered the portal. I assume he goes to Vanderbilt. There is no inside information there, to be very clear. That's just me. Player follows coach. High level makes sense. That was another name. Let's see. Another name. Another name that surprised me. I don't know if he ends up entering the portal. I mean, I assume he does because his coach left. Isaac Jones at Washington State. I was really impressed by him and Jalen Wells, too. Those two at Washington State. Miles Rice also was excellent. But those three at Washington State, I think those are legit players. And Isaac Jones in particular to me, big body down low. He was the reason they won that Drake game. So he's another guy I'm looking at that says, yeah, if he transfers out, whether it's following his coach or just goes somewhere else, high major. That was a guy that had no expectations entering the season. He was a guy who played well down low at Idaho. But again, that was at Idaho. To the Pac-12 where he does it again. And like Washington State, were they the second best team in the Pac-12 this year? Probably. So the fact that he was able to do that on the second best team in the Pac-12, then he can go somewhere and make an impact again. Isaac Jones is another name. I think that's a deeper cut than the more obvious names that really, really looked excellent to me.
All right. Anything else on the round of 64 or 32 before we get into the Sweet 16?
Not that I can think of. Shout out Grand Canyon for winning that game. That was a fun game. They're athletic. Yeah. Were there any
I got scared away from them. I said it to you. I said,
yeah.
I think I said it to everybody I talked to about Grand Canyon. I'm like, any other draw, I would have been picking them. No questions asked, like I was about JMU. It was somebody that I had been on since like late December. Yep. I was like, that's a team. If they make it out of the WAC, I'm picking them. I don't care. And then I saw the draw, and then I got in my own head, and then ended up being a close game anyway. So I don't know. I'm still really mad at myself for psyching myself out.
I psyched myself out on Drake Washington State. I had Washington State.
I know.
And then everyone else picked Drake. And then it's like that. Normally when I bracket, like, especially games like that, it's like if it's a 50-50 game that I think is a toss-up, which that one I actually leaned Washington State. But if it is, just pick the game that not everyone's going to pick. Pick the team that less people are going to pick. Because then if they win, I gain more. And let's be real, I'm trying to win a bracket pool, right? I don't care if I get 15th or if I get 30th, and 30th is dead last. I just want to win. So if I pick the team that gives me a better advantage over the field, that's what I should have done. I should have stuck to my guns there. That one is the one that looks at me and it's like, oh, DeRosa, you idiot. You went against everything you do, and you got burnt by it. Also, I feel like I've mentioned this on like Twitter 1,000 times on the ECB show yesterday.
I know exactly what you're about to say.
Yeah, you know exactly where I'm going. Or the end of the Oregon-Creighton game.
Yeah, I do it.
They didn't move. I've replayed that play in my head about 1,000 times and 1,000 more after our show yesterday. I don't get what happened there. I don't get it. It's crazy to me. And the fact that it hasn't been like clipped everywhere is crazy to me. I need to find that clip. Man, that one got me. But yeah, I think that is about every overarching narrative from the first two rounds that I have.
Again, good clarity there that we tried to not talk about the games themselves, more of just things to take away and absorb. So obviously that sets us up for what I think is an incredible Sweet 16. Only one double-digit seed, only 2 seeds higher than 4, if I'm getting that correct, right? Clemson, San Diego State. I'm taking NC State, by the way, out of it, by the way. Higher than 5. So Gonzaga being a 5, Duke being a 4, San Diego State being a 5. Just a ton of 4 and down, right? Or 4 and up, right? Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this, right? Obviously, NC State's an 11 seed. We're going to lay them aside for a second because anything can happen with a team like that because we've seen it with VCU. We've seen it with UCLA. We've seen it with plenty of examples that I'm not even thinking of right now.
Loyola.
If it wasn't, all right, I'll ask it this way. If it wasn't a 1 or 2 seed to win the national championship, who has the best chance to do it?
Yeah, so
So
it's a
one or
very
two is all
interesting question.
loose, which is ridiculously outlandish, but you get my point.
Yeah, just looking at the 1 and 2s, Illinois has the highest ceiling to me, just because good Illinois can put on like a huge run. Like that roster's so talented, and all things considered, there is a chance they have the best player in just about every game in TJ Shannon. Another one, if this team gets hot, Alabama, just the way they play, like an Alabama ceiling game, if we can get 4 of those in a row, which to be clear, I'm not expecting at all. In fact, I think UNC beats them fairly handily. But if we can get 4 Alabama ceiling games in a row, they could beat anybody. Like if we're getting a game where they shoot 50% from three and they're absolutely controlling the tempo against a team that wants to slow it down, like UConn wants to slow it down. If they can play that fast pace, gunsling, hit a ton of threes, it's going to be hard to beat them. But if we're going realistic, I think the answer is Illinois, because I think Illinois, in my mind, does beat Iowa State. Now, obviously, I'm not super confident in that. I think Illinois has the talent and the roster to be physical with UConn, which I think is a bit of a matchup problem for the Huskies. And then Final Four national championship, you just need to win 2 games. Yeah, Illinois would be my pick as a lower team that can win it, but Alabama is the more like, maybe they, if we get good Alabama, maybe they can. And I just don't think Creighton has the matchups for a Tennessee or Purdue, so that's why I'm not picking them.
This might sound interesting as it comes out, but I think the overarching thought of what it means is interesting to think about. Power rank the 3 Big East teams left in terms of confidence that they can win the national championship from 1 to 3. 1 being
UConn,
most
Marquette,
confident.
Creighton.
Okay, explain
Definitive.
2 and 3, because obviously the number 1.
Yeah.
The reason I said it's going to sound interesting is because why are we doubting them? But then you just laid out a great. I mean, Illinois can beat them. There's no question.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're thinking ahead here a little bit. Iowa State or Illinois can beat them. I think Illinois has the better chance. So
Yeah,
just
I think
lay that out there now. But explain the 2-3 based on you've covered the Big East all year as you alluded to at the beginning.
So I like Marquette's matchup initially. I just think the fact that Marquette, guards win games in March, and Marquette is the best point guard in the country in my mind. And Tyler Kolek, the way he controls his game is excellent. Their backcourt is great, and Oso is just a tricky piece to have to prepare for, because he is 6'10", not the most physical guy, but he's an excellent passer, and he's someone who can initiate offense. Oso dribbles the ball up the floor probably about 15-20% of the time, and that's not something you see from almost any other team in the country. How many other teams have centers that can handle the ball? So just from that perspective, I think Marquette's an interesting matchup. I think Marquette, you would need an excellent game to beat Houston. I think that is probably the toughest matchup for Marquette in the tournament, because they've seen UConn 3 times, 2 of them without Kolek, but they've seen UConn 3 times. It's hard to beat a team 4 times that's really good. UConn is just better, but it would be hard to beat a team 4 times if that is UConn. I think if they can get by Houston, I think we've seen them beat Purdue. No, they played Purdue tough. They didn't beat them. They beat Kansas, but in that game. But they played Purdue really tough. And again, also Zach Edey's going to get his, but you can draw him out of the paint and move. It's hard for him. He's not super mobile to guard a lot of their dribble handoff action and stuff like that. I think Marquette's style is very intricate, and guards win games in March. And in just about any game they'll play, aside from maybe Houston, they have the better guards. So Marquette 2 and Creighton 3, I do not think Creighton matches up well with Tennessee at all. I think Tennessee's ball pressure is going to create real problems. And Dalton Connect, Creighton does not have a matchup for Dalton Connect. He's going to go off. And I think they can be physical inside with Kalkbrenner, Awaka, and Aidu, unless Creighton gets them in foul trouble, which Creighton doesn't really draw fouls. But if they can, I think that changes things. But if not, those guys are going to be physical with Kalkbrenner. They're going to move him around, and Kalkbrenner isn't the most physical guy himself. So I think the way to beat Creighton is to kind of muscle him up. And I think Tennessee is going to do exactly that. And then Tennessee also has the best player on the floor, which is not normal for Creighton. They're not used to going, because Shireman is excellent. They're not used to going up against a guy who is just better, and Connect is just better.
Yeah, and that thing about Creighton to think about too is or I guess Tennessee more than Creighton, but in the matchup specifically, is that Tennessee shot so poorly in the game against Texas, and they won. I know it was against by 4 against a really experienced Texas team. There's a lot you can take away from that and think 4-point, they probably should have beat them by 40. And it's I don't know. Yeah. Texas, I think, was playing for their life a little bit.
Yeah,
and then I'm glad you brought up the Purdue potential matchup with Marquette, because obviously that would be what plays out potentially if Tennessee and Purdue match up in the Elite Eight. Anything on the Boilermakers that, obviously the answer obviously is the guard questions, but is there something about like what does Purdue have to do to win the national championship? Like what is their ideal scenario that happens? Even if the guards are incredible and they lock in for the next four games, but what is the difference maker for Purdue that's not the guards? I guess that gets them the national championship eventually.
Yeah, so the guards is the big answer. I think more so. Okay, if I can't say the guards because like the guards are so like ceiling floor.
You're
Just
right.
the other like
It's a hard question because
yeah.
I don't even know if I don't think I even know the answer when I ask it because I an answer for myself. And the whole point I'm doing this, and this is your first time here, as people know, like first time guests get the whole like sit down David Letterman type treatment. But the point is like we agree on a ton of things. Like there's really nothing you've said where I interjected and went, I completely disagree with that. And I knew that coming into this, which is why I'm asking questions that I have not figured out myself. And B, I think you know the answer to eventually.
No, it's tough. I like talking about it, like thinking it through. I think this is what makes shows like this entertaining to me, at least. Is just like, all right, I'm trying to think of something new, something you haven't thought of. Look at the 4 spot to me at Purdue. What can we get out of Gillis and TKR? I think Kaufman-Red is he's someone I liked entering the preseason. I think he's really good because I think you can play him with Edey and as a backup to Edey. I think he's a very interesting wrinkle in that sense because he has more of an outside game than I feel like Purdue has shown off. Like he is a good passer and he can hit like a 15-foot jumper. He can even step out and kind of hit a 3. You can play him with and without Edey, like especially if you want to go like Twin Towers type stuff, like Samson and Olajuwon back in the day. But I think if you can get a decent bit out of the 4 spot, especially because I'm going to sound like a broken record here. How are they going to guard Dalton Connect? You're going to need Mason Gillis to really kind of go off. Mason Gillis, not go off in the sense of like go for 50, but like really lock down Connect, really play physical with him, do whatever you can. Because just athletically, he's the better matchup of just about anyone on Purdue. Because Lance Jones, who's probably their best defender, is too small to guard Connect. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", maybe 6'4". Connect's just bigger than him. So I think if they can get something out of the 4 spot, full disclosure, I have Tennessee beating Purdue. I had that early on. I still have that now.
Same here.
Yeah. So
you knew that. So
yeah, I think it's just that if they can get the guards are really like if Braden Smith is hitting and they're like able to create shots in that game, if they're able to get by the initial pressure, of a Ziegler, I think that could cause some problems. But it really comes down to what can they get out of the 4 spot. If they can get legit offensive production, to me, I think that could really raise their ceiling.
Yeah, there are some things that I think are worth having conversation about because I know on plenty of shows we've done already recently this week, like I could have a question about like what does San Diego State have to do, right? But we know that there's a glaring weakness there against obviously the best team in the country. Iowa State, Illinois, best offense, best defense. Like there's an overarching obvious thing about every one of these games, which makes me incredibly nervous from how I feel about the result and from a betting standpoint. I think it's interesting. I think there's so many. Like I mentioned it yesterday. Clemson at plus 6.5 against Arizona, I think is absolutely free money. Like I think it's just
you and I disagree on this one.
It's foreign, but because you think it should be bigger, like Arizona.
Yeah, I think Arizona beats the piss out of them.
Okay, and look, and that may be the fact that that's the only one where that drastic. Like obviously, State Marquette might be the other one, but like all these games feel like they could be 5-point games, and not a single person will be surprised, right? So like my lazy question would be, what does San Diego State need to do to beat UConn? The real question is, I think, try to figure out the best way to word this so it comes out right. What is the biggest reason? Pick a 1 seed, and what is the biggest reason that they go down? So I guess who's your biggest 1 seed that could go down? I think I already kind of asked this earlier, but maybe some more clarity on one of them.
I think just first round. Honestly, I feel like I'm fairly confident they all get to the Elite 8, which is weird.
Which that's what I'm trying to get at with the question. Yeah. Thank you.
It's weird. I guess if Alabama has a really good game, just because Alabama is so ceiling dependent and UNC is going to run with them, if Alabama can play up to that and we don't see a Stevenson, a Nelson, a Diabate, a Waiki get in foul trouble, that maybe that can be a problem there, that maybe they can beat UNC because UNC also in my mind is the weakest one. I think the committee had that. So that's one for me. I think that's one if they lose round 1 there. I think UConn's got a tough road too because I think San Diego State and Illinois or Iowa State. I think that honestly, I think if they play Iowa State, I think UConn kind of rolls. I think that is the easiest matchup for them of the three. I think they like have some problems, but like picking against UConn just doesn't sound like a recipe for success. So yeah. And we talked about Purdue, Tennessee. I think Tennessee beats Purdue. I think Tennessee might just be the better team, honestly, at this point. And Dalton Connect is just going to get his. And Awaka and Adu getting in foul trouble is definitely a concern, especially because Tennessee doesn't really have a ton of big man depth behind Adu, because Awaka's only 6'8". He's physical, he's strong, he's fun to watch in my mind. He's my kind of guy, but he's 6'8". So what are we getting out of him there in terms of that matchup? But yeah, I think if one goes down in the Sweet 16, I think it's North Carolina. I do not think North Carolina and Purdue make the Final Four. I'm confident enough to say that. I think the other two should.
Okay. The way you answer that last question, there's honestly nothing else I'm going to ask about the Sweet 16 that doesn't make any sense right this second. So let's honestly just pick them, because I think that you kind of alluded a lot of answers to maybe the pick, and then some of them there was an obvious pick for you. So we'll start in the East. UConn, San Diego State. Who wins and why? So just like each pick will be like a 15 to 30 second reason. Like if we sit here and have the same conversation a week later, what was the reason they got it done?
Yeah, I think UConn wins fairly competitively. I just think San Diego State doesn't have the horses to put up with them offensively. I think UConn's offense is the best unit on the floor. And I think San Diego State will do enough to like contain them. But in the end, yeah, I think UConn's just too good, too skilled at all like 5 positions, really. I think Klingon could be due for a big game. So I got UConn winning that one. Yeah, that'd be my pick there.
I think it may play out very similar to the national championship game, which I know you kind of alluded to that there. That being there, obviously, I was enjoying the moment more than really breaking down the game analytically. But I sat there and was like, "Oh, San Diego State's like making this interesting in the first half," and then UConn went on like an 11-2 run in that first half, and I was like, "Never mind, there goes that thought." Right? So I really feel like there'll be a moment where we all kind of go, "Ooh, the Aztecs might do it." And then, and I really don't have a reason why or why not, which is why I thought that was interesting. I think that was the best way to answer it. Was I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep up, which is ultimately what happened last year in the championship game. All right, Illinois, Iowa State. This is probably the most intriguing one of them all.
I think I think Shannon is a real matchup problem. I think I think that's the matchup there. And then I think Illinois has the athletic pieces up in the front court. While they are a tad erratic, they're just more athletic, like a Coleman Hawkins, like a Quincy Guerrier. And Marcus Damas just so solid. I think they will have enough guys to find decent shots in this game. Guard play is a bit of a concern for me, leading like a I don't even know who like really we trust as Illinois' point guard. Is it a Justin Harmon? Is it a Ty Rodgers? Yeah, but I think TJ Shannon initiates enough offense. I think if they're able to get by that first layer of Iowa State pressure, which I think they will, I think they'll be able to find some good shots. They'll be able to change the game in transition. I lean Illinois. I am not confident in that pick whatsoever. I just think they have more talent on the roster than Iowa State. I think Iowa State's really good because of like team defense and stuff like that. But I don't know if Iowa State has the shot makers can like hit a couple big shots. Like, can we get 3 buckets in a row from Taman Lipsy? Will Milan Momcilovic shoot 4-7 from 3 or something like that? So in this spot, I lean Illinois because of that. It is not a very confident pick because Illinois just does some dumb things. But I lean Illinois, because I just think they have the creators and the horses to have multiple guys who maybe if it isn't a Shannon's day, maybe Damas can have a good day from the high post. And I just think they have multiple matchups that they can take advantage of.
All right, two teams we haven't talked about really at all today, Houston and Duke.
Houston, more physical. I think Shed's the best player on the floor. I think they really take it to Duke. I think they like just kind of muscle out Duke. I think they kind of break Duke. And I don't think the speed of a Filipowski at the 5 is something that like kind of really scares me in Houston. Most matchups it will. I don't think for Duke in really any of the games they really if they play Marquette or Houston, it's not something that scares me versus it does in most other matchups. And we saw State it's hard to beat these teams 3 times. Well, actually, State beat them in the ACC tourney, right? State beat Duke.
Correct.
Yeah. So, look, I don't think. Yeah, I think Houston was this one not fairly convincingly. I think it'll be like kind of close throughout, but I feel like it'll be one of those games where it's like 5-7, 5-7, 5-7. Then it gets to 10 and it's over.
Yep. They the Evan Mia kill shot happens for Houston, and then we just don't look back. One thing really quick about the Houston part that we didn't get to, I think is a fair question because it's come up a lot just in the last couple of days. How much stock are you putting into the fact that they gave up, 95 points to Texas A&M? How much stock are you putting into that from a confidence in them long-term standpoint? Obviously, you said you picked them here against Duke, but there's got to be, was there something there that kind of made you nervous?
A little bit. I think it was a lot of the guys getting in foul trouble too. Like you have I mean, just the way the game played out, very physical, and A&M's also a physical team. We knew A&M was capable of a performance like that if they play at like their highest level and if they're actually hitting shots. They're not a team that hit a ton of shots this year, but they hit some shots in that game that were really impressive. Obviously, the game went to overtime, but like still, I don't remember what the exact score was when it went to overtime, but it was still really high scoring, something we didn't see coming. But A&M also gave him some problems in the regular season. I remember watching that game, and I came away from it and was like, I don't know about Houston, man. They had a soft schedule, and now they play a real team without Tyrese Radford. I don't believe he went in that game, and Taylor went off and almost won that game for A&M. So the fact that that matchup happened again could just be a weird matchup with a team that can put up with Houston's physicality. I think in terms of that, if there's a team that can put up with Houston's like physicality and strength, I think they could take them. But I don't know. It doesn't overly concern me with like what I think about Houston long term. I just think we had a really like a solid game from their opponent, and I think what kind of concerns me more is the fact that A&M was able to bully them on the offensive glass. 26 offensive rebounds for A&M compared to 24 defensive rebounds from Houston. We don't see teams do that to Houston. We don't ever. That concerns me more than just the straight defense.
Did I miss that? Did they have 20? Hold on. They had 26 offensive rebounds?
I was just checking the box score right now because I was looking at it. It's like, wait, A&M shot 38%. Houston shot 51. How is this game competitive? Then you look at that. It's like, yeah, A&M had 26 offensive rebounds. Radford himself had 7.
There's no team in the country that if you give up 26 offensive rebounds that could win that game. I don't think there's another team in the country that could do that. Like, that's incredible. Yeah. Okay, wow, that's nuts. I did not realize that. I must have misread that. Okay, so the reason I bring up the Texas A&M point is because I brought it up yesterday on ECB. That was their most fouls in a game this season. The last time they gave up more than 25 fouls was against Xavier on December 1st. 26 fouls.
Woefully officiated too. I remember that game. Houston
66-60, and then they won that game, of course. The last time before that, when they gave up less than 25, but it was 24, was at TCU, that game that they lost by 1. So, look, the name of the game for them is to control their own mistakes. Like Houston, I think you kind of, I don't know if you said Tennessee necessarily. The only physical team, like Texas A&M comparably, that they'll run into on the way to the actual championship game if they make it is Tennessee in the Final Four. Yeah. I don't know if you actually said that. I may have missed that part of it. But regardless, that's the team that like no other competitively physical team is going to be on their way to there except for Tennessee, which is something to think about. If they don't play Tennessee in the Final Four, probably a good bet to make the national championship if you're the Cougars.
Yeah.
So, all right. Duke, obviously, I think you spoke to a little bit there in that answer. NC State Marquette. It's okay. I'm not going to cry about it.
Yeah. I think Marquette wins this game fairly convincingly. Yeah, I think Marquette has the better guards. And I think the fact that Oso can pull the DJ Burns out of the paint and just kind of the way Marquette's dribble handoff action, I think NC State's going to have real trouble guarding it. I think this is an excellent matchup for Marquette. I got Marquette by double digits here. I don't think this game is fairly close.
Gonna plead the Fifth Amendment. Midwest, Purdue, Gonzaga. Obviously, these two teams met earlier this year. Interesting competition. The more I thought about it and went back and looked at it, where do you go with this one and why?
Yeah, I like Purdue in this one quite a bit, honestly. I think Gonzaga's guards are playing at a really high level. You're going to need a really good game from both Hickman and Nembhard. I think those are the two that we're really going to have to see just go kind of crazy. On the EK side, I think EK gets in foul trouble fairly quickly because he's undersized. He is not a great matchup for Zach Edey. Edey just does a lot of things that can mess with him. You're going to need the guards to really step up. And if EK gets in foul trouble, which I think is almost inevitable, Gonzaga doesn't have any depth. So what do they do from there? I have no idea. I like Purdue in this spot. I think this is probably the best matchup Purdue could have gotten at this spot. I think a team like Alabama could present them problems. I think a team like Duke could present them problems. San Diego State could present them some problems. I don't think Gonzaga presents those problems to Purdue from a matchup standpoint that those other teams would. So yeah, I got Purdue. I got Purdue kind of by TKO.
So just a good thought there about, like, you mentioned other teams that give them a problem, but that's other teams that they wouldn't have had a chance to play unless they moved on far. Gonzaga obviously is who they're meeting. The other potential teams that they could have played would have been Sanford, Kansas, McNeese, or TCU. Was there any of those that you felt like if these were in the Sweet 16, you'd feel a lot more confident picking against Purdue?
I thought Kansas could have given problems, especially if fully, like, granted, no McCullough, so that does change things.
Yeah,
But
knowing what we know, because obviously we knew he was not going to be there. So just keep that in mind, I guess.
yeah, I think they would have been tougher because I think DeJuan Harris is the best guard in that game. And then I think Hunter Dickinson has had success against Zach Edey. And if you give me Bill Self with 5 days of game plan, I think he could have come up with something to make that game a little tougher. Samford, in theory, is another team that could have given problems. But if we remember the first game of the season, which I don't know if a lot of people do, I remember that game because I bet Samford like plus 18 in that one. That game was not close. But Samford was playing better down the stretch, and maybe they could have found something to draw Zach Edey out of the paint. But if you get a Chor and foul trouble in that game, they are screwed. Kansas would be the answer. And if they got TC in the second round, I think it would have been a different game. But yeah, to me, Kansas, I think, could have given them more problems than I think Gonzaga does. But I think they got a good 4-5. I think they got the 4-5 if you want, if you're a Purdue fan.
Just a reminder on the Sanford game, 45-98 in favor of the Boilermakers. I do remember that one because there was an awesome promo video of one of their walk-ons or something, or one of their
Dallas Graziani doing the tip, 5'9".
5 something. Yeah, he wasn't anywhere close to 6 feet. Definitely, I think you alluded to this a little bit, talking about some of the other matchups with Purdue. I know you don't have them in the Final Four, but some tournament teams that they could play about like a potential run. This year alone, they've beaten Illinois. We know that twice. Mm-hmm. They've beaten Alabama. They've beaten Marquette. They've beaten Tennessee. They've beaten Gonzaga. They've beaten almost every team that's left in this freaking tournament. Like, that's just something to think about because they obviously, a lot of those were, I mean, if you're just drawing a line, a lot of those were from December 16th to November 6th. Like that, keep that in mind. I think that's important. But this team, if anything, it's only gotten better. So I may be changing my mind a little bit about Purdue moving forward because of some of that stuff. Creighton, Tennessee.
Yeah, I got Tennessee. I think Tennessee matched up really well. I think Ziegler is going to be an Ashworth grill the entire game. I think that causes problems there. And then inside, I just don't think Kalkbrenner has a crazy game. I think AD is going to do enough to limit him. And I think guys like JJJ, guys like Vescovy, guys off the bench like a Jordan Gainey, I think cause enough problems to Creighton, both offensively, defensively, respectively, with some of those guys that, yeah, I got Tennessee. I think Tennessee matched up really well. This is a pick I'm fairly confident in. I think Tennessee beats them fairly convincing. I think this is a bad matchup for Creighton, especially because Tennessee can play that slow, grinded out game. And if Creighton really wants to get in the open floor, do you really want to try to stop Dalton Connect in the open floor? Or do you really want to stop Sky Ziegler, who is the fastest player in this game in the open floor? So I think really, however this plays out, I think this is a Tennessee game. I think Creighton's going to need to shoot really, really well. And I think a guy like Vescovy and both JJJ cause different defensive problems, like matching up with Trey Alexander. They cause different kind of problems for him. So I got Tennessee here, and they have zero matchup for Connect. Creighton does. I got Tennessee here. I'm fairly confident in that.
All right, in the West, North Carolina, Alabama. We've already talked about this game a little bit from some of the Alabama stuff that we brought up earlier, the 1-seed stuff in North Carolina. Yep. But who wins and why? I think we've already heard the answer.
Yeah, fast-paced game. I got North Carolina because of that. I just think North Carolina. I think Mark Sears is excellent. I think RJ Davis is excellenter. Yeah, and then just inside, I think Baycott causes problems for the way Alabama wants to play. I don't think they have a real matchup for him. Where I think you can expose Baycott defensively. Offensively, I think he creates his own problems, and Alabama cannot stop a dribble drive. And UNC dribble drives a lot. They have multiple guys who can put the ball on the floor. It's not just Davis, not just Cadeau. You also have Harrison Ingram, who's a really good ball handler. Cormac Ryan is not a bad ball handler either. So yeah, I got UNC in this one.
Shout out to Cormac Ryan for helping me at a little same gamer a couple days ago. Clemson, Arizona. This is probably the one that, as of right this second, we've got still plenty of days here. This doesn't happen until Thursday. We're recording this on Tuesday the 26th. This game is on the 28th. This podcast will go on the 27th, just for a timeline for folks listening. This is the game that I'm still thinking the hardest about. I mentioned the 6.5 already, but I know we talked about on ECB yesterday. There's a lot of reasons why Clemson could win, but I know where you lean on this. But just, I guess, Arizona and why. Sorry, I didn't mean to take your pick, but why Arizona?
Yeah, you stole my thunder.
What pick and why? Sorry.
Yeah. Trevor mentioned it. I love Arizona in this spot. I think Arizona, I think is the best team in the country. I think PJ Hall versus Umar Ballo actually does cause problems. The more I think about it, to a point that I expect Trev to make, because he stole my pick. I'm stealing the point he's going to make. I think PJ Hall does really cause problems for the way Clemson operates, but just on the other end, Keshad Johnson, I think, has the physicality and the speed to match up with a Shefflin. I think the guards on Arizona are just so much better. They're going to cause so many problems. And you guys mentioned on the show, you don't really trust Colin Boswell. I'm not going to lie. I think I disagree with that. I think he's a solid point guard. He's not going to try to score a ton. He just gets the ball down the floor. He's a good ball mover, gets guys in the right spots. And let's say he's having a bad game. You bring a Jaden Bradley or a KJ Lewis off the bench. Those are two really good guards too. I think they can go 7 deep. And then you have Pele Larson. You have some of the other guys that cause problems. I think good Arizona is just really good. And I think they're just going to overwhelm Clemson. Have I picked against Clemson in every single game they've played in this tournament, to be clear? Yes, I have. Am I going to stop? Yeah, I can't think of a matchup where I wouldn't pick against Clemson, just looking all the way down the line. So probably not. I think this Clemson team's really good. They were a team I were really high on entering the season, but Arizona to me is just, I think this is just a levels game, and I think Arizona's a level above. And if we get good Arizona, I think this game is a destruction.
People who are on Clemson and Clemson fans are going to hear that comment as potentially disrespectful, but I understand what you mean. Like, at the end of the day, this is not like we beat New Mexico, who we weren't favored against, and we beat Baylor, who's a top 3 seed.
One of those games.
That's great. But looking forward, the teams are getting better, right? The teams are getting worse. So I do think Clemson obviously ultimately could probably come up short here. The thing about Kylan Boswell, I won't go as far as saying like the roller coaster thing. I know that's what Peyton and Josh were talking about yesterday, but I will say that when he's really good, they can beat teams by 25. And when he has a game like he did against, who was it? Dayton in the second round, he had 2 points, 0 of 3 from the field, 0 of 2 from the 3,
it's Jaden Bradley
2 from the line. Like it was, but he's 17 minutes, right? Yeah. Tommy Lloyd knows when to put Kylan Boswell in those spots and not force it, because ultimately that Dayton game was kind of close for a little while there. Even in the second half. So the point is they know how to handle when Boswell does it. And this is not just a crap on Boswell thing. It's just even from like a draft. I did a mock draft a few weeks ago, and I didn't think he'd be picked in the first round, but somebody took him at the end of the first, which I can see. But there's so many things that can get you in trouble with him, just from like even thinking about his draft potential. If we're going NBA, they know how to regulate him.
Yeah, he's young, really young. Like I think he should be a fan. So that's part of it. But also, just because I remember you mentioned earlier, you got some Clemson fans and people who might be listening who might say
there's at least 3 that I know of that are listening to the show right now. Yeah.
So to you 3, Chase Hunter really, really impressed me in this week. I was really impressed with him. He was excellent. So we'll credit him there.
All right, I do this to every guest, and then we'll jump into the Big East thing quickly here. So, because actually one of the top question of the Big East that I did send you, I didn't forget to put that one in there. Some guys already have transferred today. So, who wins the national championship and why?
Shinto beans. I don't want to come on here and pick UConn because that's boring, right? Like,
do what you actually think. I mean, like this is you actually think UConn wins it. So do I, by the way.
Yeah. Like, you know what? No, I'm not picking UConn. Screw that. Give me Houston. I think they're physical, and I think Jamal Shed is. After I think they beat Marquette, I think he is the best guard in the tournament. So I'll take Houston. I just think the physical matchup, I think that causes almost every team in the tournament problems. Like of the teams that I think make it out of the other side of the bracket, the left side of the bracket, Arizona to me is a Final Four team. You can kind of like muscle them around a little bit. I think that's something you can do. And bad Arizona just is not ready for that. You would need a big game at Keshad Johnson if that's a matchup in UConn. If you can switch a lot of the off-ball action UConn runs defensively, you can cause UConn significant problems. And the best way to beat Tristan Newton is to play physical with him and make him give up the ball quickly before UConn can run all that off-ball action. Then it kind of gets them out of their action. And I think Houston has the pieces to do that. So I don't want to pick UConn, especially because I'm not fully bought into UConn as other people are. Like you saw that thing that Mike Greenberg said where he's like, UConn, they'd make the NBA playoffs.
This is it's the dumbest. Like
they wouldn't
hear about this every year or so, where there's a team that this team could go up a league, and it's
if they played the Pistons 82 times, do they win more than 5 games? I would say no.
I would say no because I think the Pistons were the example everyone kept using, and they have Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham. Like I'm just thinking of guys off the top of my head. There's plenty more, but those 3 guys alone, those are guys that have been through the NBA a couple of years now. So probably not.
No.
Yeah. So. I do think UConn's that good though. I don't know if they'll beat them. They probably win a few games though. It's just it's a good hypothetical, and there are websites out there that you can technically put that hypothetical together. I don't know if the college NBA thing you can, but there are some hypothetical websites out there that you can run simulations, and it'd be interesting to see how it turns out. So I did not prepare you for a best bet segment that I normally do, but no problem if you don't have one. So we're going to get into the Big East, but if you do have one, that's great. I forgot to ask you. So do you have a best bet of the Sweet 16? Just something that you've got money on that people can ride behind?
So I have money on. I have Tennessee. I got Tennessee at -2. I do not know what the line is currently as we are speaking. I bet Tennessee at -2 at open. I just think Tennessee matched up really well. I'm going to pull up DraftKings to make sure the line isn't like too crazy. Oh, I shouldn't have named them. We don't get sponsored for that. Sorry, Trev.
It's all good. If people want to sign up though, really quick while you're doing that, Sign Up Expert is the betting sponsor for the Two Pointers podcast. If anybody is in their state, in their place, signupexpert.com/TPP. Select your location. You get access to exclusive discounts and promotions through Sign Up Expert on any daily fantasy and any sports book that is legal in your state. So wherever it is, might be DraftKings for you. Yeah. For me, when I signed this partnership, it wasn't DraftKings. It was the only thing I could do was daily fantasy, which we can now do in North Carolina. We can do daily. We can do all the sports book stuff. So TPP, signupexpert.com/TPP. So.
Good plug. Yeah, while I cook that up too, Tennessee is -3 right now. I still like it at 3. I don't like it. Obviously, I like it less than I did at 2, but like I would still take it at 3. And another one, Houston -4. I know I'm going full chalk donkey mode, but I just like a lot of favorites on the way this slate lines up. Houston -4. I just think Houston causes problems for Duke physically. I think the game is kind of lower scoring. The total is 134. If it goes under, that usually plays in favor to the underdog, but I got Houston. I just think Houston outmuscles them. I see that, the way we describe this game, I think Houston wins by double digits. So that'd be the other one.
Houston -4 and Tennessee that you got at -2, but still good with -3. Sorry for not preparing you for that, but I knew you had the Tennessee from yesterday, so it's just something to think about. For me, it's Joseph Girard, 4+ made threes plus 194. If they win the game, he has to shoot well. Just
if you SCP that, if it's correlated,
I don't know. I don't think it was, which is why I probably took it by itself. But yeah, I'm using FanDuel. So
yeah, if you can find that, and because plays like that are kind of correlated. That's something I usually look for. Like if Girard hits 4 threes, that puts Clemson in the game to win the game. So if you can parlay that together, there is a correlation there of outcomes, and usually you can get the odds better than you would expect it to. I think if you're playing an SGP, you want to play correlated outcomes. You if we're talking NFL, for example, if we think the running back has a great game, that means the team doesn't throw as much. So the quarterback passes less. So maybe the quarterback passing attempts under versus the rushing yards over. Those outcomes correlate. I think in terms of that, I think that's how we have to use SGP's advice.
You can correlate them. I just realized maybe I just missed it before, but yeah, you can. Just kidding. No, you can't. It's the one right above another SGP. You can do rebounds and points and all this other stuff, but for some reason made threes is not one of them, which is probably why I took it by itself anyway.
Yeah.
And the Clemson line is up to +7.5. So even somebody like me who waited a little bit, who liked 6.5, I'm starting to like 7.5 even more. So it's I might need to think about that. So anyway, didn't think we'd actually get into a best bets there because I forgot to prep you, but thank you for having that. All right, quickly on the Big East. I really want to talk about the Big East because look, there are a lot of people that understand and love and know the Big East very well. And for me, you are one of them. So the reason I want to bring it up is because the DePaul thing has baffled me since I started covering college basketball 3 years ago. Really to an extent. Can Chris Holtmann change the tide at DePaul? It's a simple answer, and then there are follow-ups to it. Or simple question, and then there are follow-ups to it.
Can he? Yes. Define what we mean by change the tide. Like make them a team that can consistently make the tournament, or make them a team that can be competitive in the Big East.
That's a really good follow-up. I didn't think you'd ask the question with the question. I guess you would probably know this better than anybody. What is their where are their fans have become to a point where I'm just trying to think of another Power 5 team. Like in the ACC, we don't have, the area I covered, we don't really have a team if anything, historically, it would be somebody like State, right, where the expectations are very lofty. That's probably a good comp, but State's at least been competitive in the last 35 years, right?
Or Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech usually, but then you had the run with Alvarado.
Yeah. Then you had the run before, with you had some really interesting NBA guys in and out of there that made tournaments at least. So they made a Final Four, I think, in 2004. Yeah. Now that I think about it, so that would obviously eliminate the Georgia Tech because DePaul, it's a 30-something year gap. I mean, that's kind of or 40-something year. It's
DePaul hasn't made the tournament since they became a Big East team. They haven't made the tournament since 2004.
So let's just go with the expectation is you just get in.
At one point, sure. I think Holtman's a better coach than he gets credit for because of how his Ohio State tenure ended. He was really good at taking away your number one option. Keep in mind, I'm a Butler student, so I don't really think I'm biased on this because I wasn't there when Holtman was there.
That's
It was
fair.
like I followed the Big East at the time, but
That's a
I
good
wasn't there when
point.
Holtman was there. But I think if anyone, I think Holtman's the best hire they could have made. It's just a matter of, does the administration at DePaul really want to invest in basketball? Because if they can, I still think you have a lot of work to do to try to get some local recruits to actually want to play at DePaul. I think that is an uphill battle, a pretty steep uphill battle. We're seeing at Georgetown, the uphill battle's the same, but different reasons for why it's that way. So in terms of can Holtman change the tide? Yeah, I think he can maybe be the first DePaul coach since they've been in the Big East to make the tournament. But like, I don't know. If this hire doesn't work out for DePaul, I just think they're kind of cooked. I can't lie.
So that's a good follow-up. If not, who or what will it take? Like, was there a name that you're like, maybe it's somebody that would be way lofty and they would never take the job because that's kind of the job's become a point where like no big humongous name that we've seen move this offseason would take the job. Like there's just nobody that would. But is there somebody that you'd be like, that would be the perfect hire? Something maybe you've been sitting on and never shared.
Porter Moser was the one. I remember I talked about this like late last year. Moser, he had success in Chicago. He is local-ish. Like he's had success in that area. He knows what it takes to recruit guys who would want to play in Chicago. And Big East is easier to recruit for than the MVC, hypothetically speaking. He was the one. If not, and you're still in the same spot for DePaul, if Holtman doesn't work out, I think you got to take a risk with just someone who is savant of X and O's and just say, look, we need to be respectable soon enough. Maybe we're not going to get the most elite talent, but we need someone who is just a giga brain X and O's genius who can run this really complex offense that other Big East teams just aren't really used to seeing. Because the Big East is a more physical league. You want to zag where everyone else zigs and try to run this really pretty offense that just guys aren't ready for. I think that's another thing. A Schertz is the name that comes to mind. Just someone who runs such beautiful offense that it's like you look at it, you're like, woo. But I think the Holtman hire is a really good hire. Like just point blank. He's won in the Big East before at an institution that it's not easy to win at Butler in the Big East, and he's done that. Like we're seeing that now. It's not easy to win at Butler in the Big East because you don't have the resources that other schools have. You can't really recruit nationwide. At DePaul, if they're investing in it, you kind of can, and you're recruiting to Chicago. That's a basketball hotbed. So
yes.
Yeah, I think he can change the tide in the Big East at DePaul, excuse me. And it'll take an uphill investment. You're going to need actual athletic department people to want to be invested in their basketball program because they haven't been for the last 20 some odd years. So if you can get those people back and be like, you know what, DePaul needs to have a winning basketball program, and we have a guy that can help us do that. I think that's the play.
This may be dumb of me to even ask, but like they don't have a football program, right? So why wouldn't they care about basketball? I just don't get it.
I don't know if they care about athletics.
Yeah, fair. Is it the hardest job in the Big East?
DePaul? Yes, at this current moment. I think Butler's an uphill battle if you're coaching there. I think Seton Hall is an uphill battle. But right now, by far and away, DePaul is the toughest job. You have not made the tournament.
Shaheen figured it out, though. Hey, Shaheen figured it out. For that to be the third team of the 11 that you just named, it shows you how impressive he's been.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really does. So, is it the hardest job in Power 5?
I think Washington State's a tougher job, but are we considering them Power 5 right now? Because
technically not, because the season's over for them, so they're technically not in the Power 5 anymore. So yeah, that's fair.
Northwestern's a tough job. Nebraska's tough because like they haven't won a tournament game ever.
I know, it still blows my mind.
Yeah, I think it's got to be up there. UCF maybe because we don't know how invested they are in basketball.
The football money helps them more than anything. Yeah. I mean, they just because they're relatively competitive in football, basketball gets the repercussion of that.
Rutgers is a really tough job too. Like you're recruiting to.
Michael's done really well though. I think so far.
Really
obviously,
well. Sky high Michael.
Right. Yeah, I think that helps. Okay. Anything else on DePaul? That was really there wasn't anything crazy for me on my end. I wanted to think about Holtman. I wanted people to really understand the Holtman thing a little bit better.
I mean, as we are recording, I've been checking my phone periodically. Yep. Sorry.
They've been me too. They've been transfers galore right now
for
them.
Churchill LaBasse just entered the portal, so it is literally going to be an entirely new DePaul team Like
Yep.
DePaul lost everyone.
And they already brought in guy followed him from the assistant. Oh gosh, help me out.
Brian
Holtman brought in
Mullins.
assistant. Yep, Mullins, which is
from
an
SIU.
incredible assistant, by the way. He'll have another
Yeah.
job in the next 2 to 3 years if the
Mhm.
DePaul thing doesn't work out. And then they brought over their best player from Southern Illinois too, so or wherever the heck that he came from at this point.
Yeah.
I can't keep up. But anything else? I know you're bringing up the transfers.
Yeah, I think that covers DePaul about as much as we can.
I brought down some intriguing transfers out, but really I think we're so early in the process that who's the perfect name that's available right this second? This is a tough question. I definitely want to ask you this publicly or privately in the future.
Sure.
Is there a team in the next, who right now is available would be a splash for Butler and Georgetown briefly, since those are your teams?
Yeah, so Butler is definitely the tougher one to answer because Butler needs a center. Just like point blank, they need a center bad. And it's hard to find a center in the portal. Like big men, as we saw this year, like Lance Ware was a guy who was really coveted in the Big East, and spoiler, that dude ain't do jack. So he's someone that it's like, Butler needs a center. I think Butler also now needs a 2. I think a 2 guard that Butler just reached out to today. Jesus, what is his name? Oh, they reached out to Dante Maddox. He's a 1-2, excellent shooter. I think he could add something, but I think Butler kind of needs more physical piece of guard because Pierre Brooks is just not a good defender. So I think you need someone who can make up for that defensively. And then at the 5, it is kind of tough. The ideal one was Xavier Booker if he ends up transferring just because Indianapolis kid. Yeah. It's hard to answer for Butler at the 5 because I just think they need any sort of 5, any sort of legit Big East body there. So there it's tough. I think the Georgetown's much easier because they need just about everything, if I can just speak to that now. There's some assistant coach drama that I think is very interesting at Georgetown because Coach Thomas took the Hampton job. So now it's like, okay, this is Cooley's first assistant he has to hire at Georgetown. And I think he's fully learning. Like, I think he knew getting into the job and what he did this season that the AAU scene in DC is a mess because there are so many like excellent AAU programs. Now that he's hiring an assistant, every single AAU coach is in there like, get our guy on staff, get our guy on staff, get our guy on staff. There's like 5 of them. So if you pick one of the AAU coaches, you got to get the drama with everyone else. But if they pick the takeover guy, let's be real, takeover is the best AAU program in the country. If we're talking high school ball, just really quickly, they just are. But Georgetown, couple names that come to mind. You need everything to be clear. You need literally everything. I think Georgetown needs an athletic big. Where can they find that? Not really a type has entered the portal yet. Then looking out guards, DMV guards are coming home. Doug McDaniel, I believe, has officially entered the portal. He's someone you got to target. Malik Mack just entered from Harvard. 3 years of eligibility. That kid is a stud. Yeah, just the way he was doing what he did, especially against like high-level comp. Like he played well against Indiana. He played well early season before he got mono against some of the other bigger schools. That kid can play, and I think that kid can play immediately in the Big East. Same with Tyler Perkins at Penn, now in the transfer portal. Gave you 22 and 6 against Villanova in one of his first games as a college player. 22 and 6 against Villanova, and that Villanova roster incredibly talented. One of probably the 10 most talented rosters in the country. So that's another one I'm looking at. Then lastly, Keyshawn Hall just entered the portal from George Mason. Bit of a weird way he ended his season, just some drama there. But when you get a kid who is 6'7" with legit guard skills, can score at all 3 levels, particularly inside, he's physical. And at 6'7", excellent pick and roll ball handler too. That is a matchup nightmare for any team, especially like a Big East team. That guy gets just another year of getting more athletic, bigger. That kid would cause problems for every single Big East team. I think I named a whole bunch of guys. Georgetown will also have a whole bunch of openings. So we'll see how many they fill.
All right. That's Michael DeRosa, my friend at MD The Dream. First of all, thank you for coming on today. Really quick, all your stuff will be in the link in the description below on all podcast platforms and YouTube. Plug away, let people know what you're working on, where they can find you, etc.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Trev. Always fun talking hoops with you. At MD The Dream on Twitter, Trev mentioned a couple podcasts, Road to the Garden. We cover all sorts of Big East stuff. Big East guy. Let's be real. Big East guy. Covering Big East makes sense. Draw lines there. Ding and DeRosa, just talking all things college hoops. ECB, Trev and I are both on a ton. If you guys aren't listening to the ECB show, you give your head a shake. You've lost the plot. Writing stuff, House Enterprise, same thing. But you can all find all my writing stuff on Twitter. I'll link to it. Then you can be like, oh, hey, let me click this. And then you should click it because I'm the man. You should click everything I do. If anyone also wants to sponsor me, by the way, I need the money. So that would be really nice. But yeah, I think I plugged just about everything I can.
That works. Thank you again, my friend.
Hey, thank you, my guy.